She pulled the last wolf from the ice, unaware the pack she saved was the Alpha King's own. The river cracked on the third night of the deep freeze, the way it always does in Varnholt, not slowly, not with warning, but all at once, as if the ice had simply decided it was finished holding. I heard it from the ridge, a sound like a great door slamming shut inside the earth, and then the rushing of dark water, and then the howling, not a wolf's howl of greeting or of hunt, but the raw, desperate sound of wolves in cold water, fighting for footing that wasn't there. I was 3 hours from the hold, a patrol of 12 returning from the eastern border markers after 2 days in the wind. Corin had the lead, my best tracker, and he turned back to me on the ridge with his face already stripped of its usual steadiness, and I knew before he said a word. "The crossing, my king. We ran. I have been Alpha of Varnholt for 19 years. I have ridden into battle in the killing cold and pulled men from burning longhouses and stood over the bodies of wolves I could not save. I do not say this to name myself brave. I say it because there is a particular kind of terror that only a king feels, the kind that has nothing to do with his own body. It is the terror of watching his people in the water and knowing that the ice between him and them may not hold his weight. I shed my cloak on the bank and went in. The water was so cold, it did not even feel cold at first. It felt like being struck. I got Corin by the arm and pulled him to the near bank, and he grabbed the branch I pointed at and held. Lena next. She had a broken grip, one hand useless, and I had to loop her arm over my neck and drag. Then Osric, who is the largest wolf in my patrol and nearly took me under with him. Then 2 more whose names I am saying wrong in this recollection because the cold was in my head by then, filling the space behind my eyes. I know I got 7 of them to the bank. I know there were 12 in the patrol. I know I went in a 4th time or a 5th. I have lost count. The current by then had teeth. It was pulling east, toward the falls, and I was following it because that is where the last shapes in the water were, dark against darker water, and I would not. I did not feel the impact when the ice shelf caught me from behind. I felt nothing after that for a long time. The first thing I was aware of was warmth. Not the held, careful warmth of a hearth someone has built up to impress a visitor. The particular warmth of a fire that has been tended with attention and without ceremony for hours, low and steady and real. The second thing was pain. My left shoulder and the base of my skull and my hands, which I could not yet move. The third thing was a voice, not speaking to me. Speaking past me, low and unhurried. The way a person speaks when they are alone and have been alone long enough that talking aloud has become simply the way thought moves. "You are going to be angry when you wake up," the voice said, not angry at her, stating a fact about me she had arrived at on her own. "Men like you always are. You are going to ask where your wolves are, and I am going to tell you, and you are going to try to stand, and you should not try to stand for at least another hour." I opened my eyes. A stone ceiling, low, close, firelit. A single room, clean but spare, dried herbs in long bundles hung from the rafters. A work table against the far wall. A stool beside the fire where a woman sat with her back half turned to me, doing something with her hands I could not yet make out. She was not young and she was not old, somewhere in that country between the two where a person's face has settled into what it is going to be. Dark hair braided back without decoration. A gray working dress, plain hemmed, with a healer's leather apron over it. Her hands were moving steadily over something she held, wrapping, I realized. A strip of linen, wound with a precision that suggested she had done it 10,000 times. "My wolves," I said. My voice came out wrong, rougher than I expected, cracked at the edges. She did not startle. She turned her head toward me at a pace that suggested she had been waiting for that exact sentence. "5 of them are in the shed," she said. "It is warmer than it sounds. I have the secondary brazier going, and I banked the walls with straw before the freeze. The other 2 are on the floor behind you." I turned my head slowly and found 2 wolves curled together near the door. One of them, Lena, I could tell by her pale markings, opened an eye at me without lifting her head, assessed me, and closed it again. "They came when I brought you in," the woman said, returning to her wrapping. "I did not invite them, but I did not send them away. They have been good company." I tried to sit up. The ceiling moved. "You should not try to sit up," she said, still not looking at me. "I told you." "Who are you?" I said. She finished the wrapping, tied it off with 2 clean knots, and set it aside. Then she turned to face me fully and put her hands in her lap, and looked at me with an expression that was not deference and was not boldness, something quieter than either, something that looked like simple patience. "My name is Saren," she said. "I am the healer at the Ice Road crossing. I found you in the river." I learned the rest of it in pieces over the next hour, as she brought me broth I did not want and made me drink it anyway, and the warmth in the room slowly climbed back into my hands. She had been making her evening round, she called it that, her evening round, as though it were an ordinary thing, as though walking the ice road alone in a deep freeze at the 3rd hour past dark was simply a task on a list. She had heard the ice break from the far side of the crossing. She had reached the bank in time to find 5 of my wolves already pulling themselves out, or being pulled by the ones with better footing. The other 2, Lena and young Pip, the newest member of the patrol, were in the water still. She went in for them. I looked at her hands when she said this. They were not the hands of someone who had not been in the river that night. They were still red at the knuckles, the skin pulled tight across the joints the way it goes when the cold has bitten deep. "And then you," she said. "You were the last one. You were further down, the current had taken you east." She said it without drama, as though it were a logistical problem she had solved and filed away. "You dragged me out," I said. "You are heavier than you look," she said, with a composure so absolute that I understood it was not calm born of indifference. It was calm born of a decision. She had decided at some point that the weight of a thing did not determine whether it was worth lifting. "What is your pack?" I asked. I did not know why I did not know her. Varnholt is not a small territory, but I know the healers. I make it my business to know the healers. Something shifted in her face. Not pain, exactly. More like the careful rearrangement a person does when they have packed a thing away, and do not wish to unpack it for a stranger. "I was of Marin's Hold," she said, "Eastern Foothills." I knew the Hold, small, border pack subordinate to Varnholt. I knew the name now too, not hers, but the name connected to it. Marin's Hold had sent a beta to my ranks 2 years ago, a young man well presented with good instincts in the field. His name was Davin. He had a sister, I had been told, but she had not come with the household when he was elevated. She had stayed in the foothills. She had chosen, the council said, to remain behind. I looked at her again, the healer's apron, the dried herbs the shed full of my wolves tended. She had not chosen to remain behind. She had been left behind. There is a difference, and I had been king long enough to know it by the particular set of a person's shoulders. "The beta's sister," I said. "His elder sister," she said, with a precision that was not bitterness but was also not nothing. "I should tell you about the mark. I have been Alpha of Varnholt for 19 years. I took the hold at 31 from my father's hands, and I have held it since with the kind of grip a man develops when he has watched what happens when the grip loosens. My council has brought me women every year since. Good women, worthy women, women from strong packs with good bloodlines and the kind of bearing that makes a hall look like a hall. I have been respectful and I have been honest, and I have said no to all of them, because there was nothing in me that answered. My wolf has been quiet for 19 years. He is not a small wolf. He is not a peaceable wolf. He is the wolf of a northern alpha, which is to say he is the kind of wolf that makes other wolves take a step back. He has opinions about everything, and he shares them, and I have spent 2 decades learning to negotiate with him as one negotiates with a powerful and not entirely reasonable advisor. He went quiet when she handed me the broth. Not asleep, not absent. Quiet, the way a fire goes quiet when it has finally found the wood that is right for it, the specific wood, the only wood, and settles into the burning it has been working toward all along. I did not understand it immediately. She was standing close because she was steadying the bowl. My hands were still not entirely reliable, and her wrist was near mine, and the mark burned to life on the inside of her wrist between one breath and the next. I have heard it described. Every alpha has, in the way that a man hears about a country he has never visited, the mate mark, the bond's signature, the moment the faded recognition makes itself visible in the flesh. I had stopped expecting it 19 years ago. I had made my peace with the idea that some kings simply do not have it, that some wolves are meant to hold their territory and hold it well and nothing more. The mark on her wrist was the shape of a branching river. I looked at it. She looked at it. She looked at me. She did not say anything for a long moment, and then she said, very carefully, the way a person says a thing they want to get exactly right, "Is this what I think it is?" "Yes," I said. She sat down on the stool. She looked at her wrist. She looked at the fire. "I see," she said. That was all she said. Not a performance of emotion, not a retreat from it either. She held it the way she held everything else, with both hands, steadily, without flinching. My wolf was not quiet anymore. He was the opposite of quiet. But even then, even in that moment, I was aware of something I had not expected to feel alongside the recognition. Something that arrived with the warmth of it, inseparable from it. A kind of care, not possession. Not the alpha's claim, the territorial instinct I had braced for all my life. Something older and slower and more like the river itself than like anything a river could take from you. I did not want to rush her. I did not want to crowd the room she was making inside herself for this enormous thing. I put down the bowl. "I am Aldrin," I said, "Alpha of Varnholt." "I know who you are," she said. "I dragged you out of my river." "Yes," I said, "you did." We sat in the firelight for a while. Outside, the freeze held. Inside, Lena lifted her head once, looked at us both, and put it down again with the satisfied air of a wolf who has decided that everything is, at last, as it should be. I did not go back to the hold that night. I want to be clear about what that means and what it does not mean. It means that the cold had not yet released my legs well enough for a 3-hour walk in the dark. And it means that Saren pointed this out to me in terms that admitted no argument. And it means that I slept on the healer's spare pallet with 2 wolves at my feet, and woke to pale frozen light through the high window and the smell of wood smoke and something she was cooking over the fire. It does not mean anything that I need to explain to you. In the morning she was already up and at her work table, grinding something in a stone bowl with the steady, unhurried rhythm of a person who has been at their work for hours. I watched her for a moment from the pallet before she heard me shift, and in that moment I saw what she looked like when no one was watching her, and she looked exactly the same. No different posture, no performance dropped, no ease she had been suppressing. She was simply herself, working in her cabin, alone as she had been alone before I came. Something in me that I had not known was knotted came loose. "You are awake," she said, not turning. "How long have you been at that?" "Since dawn." A pause. "The wolves in the shed need the poultice on their forepaws. The current last night it stripped the pads of the ice. They will heal, but they need help." "You have already been to the shed." At first light, she sounded faintly surprised that I would consider this notable. "They are my patients." I sat up. My shoulder complained and my hands were stiff, but the ceiling held still this time. Progress. "Saren," I said. She turned. "Come back to the hold with me." She looked at me for a moment. "The wolves cannot be moved today." "I know I am asking about you, not the wolves." She considered this with the same thoroughness she brought to everything. "I have patients on the ice road. We will arrange coverage." The crossing is not easy to cover in a deep freeze. There are 3 families between the eastern foothills and the toll bridge who have no other healer within half a day's ride. "Saren." She stopped listing obstacles. "I am not asking you to leave them," I said. "I am asking if, when they are safe and the hold is covered and the wolves can travel, you will come back with me." She looked at her wrist. The mark was still there, of course it was. It does not fade, it does not reconsider. It had chosen, and it does not unchoose. But she was looking at it not with the expression of someone checking whether it was real, but with the expression of someone deciding what to do with a real thing. "You should know," she said, "that I am not easy to manage." "I had not planned to manage you." "My brother will have opinions." "Your brother," I said, "is a good beta and a young one, and his opinions about you are not going to be the ones that matter in this." Something moved through her face at that. A kind of relief so carefully controlled that if I had not been watching for it, I would have missed it. "All right," she said, "when the wolves can travel." We stayed 3 more days. 3 days in the healer's cabin at the ice road crossing, and I want to tell you what those days were, because they were not what you might expect. They were not dramatic. They were not the declaration of a great love or the unfolding of a long-held secret. They were 3 days of a woman working at what she was built to do, and a man watching her do it, and both of them learning the particular shape of the other's silences. She was methodical. I had never met anyone so methodical. The morning poultice rounds. The inventory she kept in a small ledger with a practiced shorthand I could not entirely decode. The way she assessed a wolf's forepaw, the way I assess a border map. completely, without rushing toward a conclusion, letting the evidence arrive in its own order. She talked to the wolves while she worked. Not in the cooing register of someone performing tenderness, but in the same quiet, matter-of-fact voice she used for everything, explaining what she was doing and why, as though they had asked. Lena, who is particular about who she accepts attention from and has dismissed more than one person I considered bringing into my inner council, lay across Saren's feet for an entire afternoon and sighed with such profound contentment that Corin, recovered enough to walk, not yet recovered enough to pretend not to feel things, had to look away. She asked me questions, not about my title or my territory. She knew the territory. She had lived on its edge for 2 years. She asked about the things I actually thought about. The water rights dispute in the Western Valleys, the question of whether the Toll Bridge Authority was worth renegotiating, whether the eastern foothills had good oak in the new growth, or whether the logging permits were outpacing the recovery. Practical things. Things with weight. I answered her. She had thoughts. Her thoughts were not the thoughts of someone performing interest in statecraft. They were the thoughts of someone who had been watching the border economics of a small pack subordinate to a large one for 2 years and had noticed things. I had not been talked to like this in a long time. Not because my advisors are bad advisors. They are good advisors. But there is a particular quality that an advisor who must consider your rank cannot quite achieve, and Saren achieved it without thinking about it at all, because she simply did not approach me with that consideration. She was not rude. She was not dismissive. She had simply decided, somewhere in the first hour of my recovery, that she would speak to me plainly, and she had not revised that decision. On the second night, I asked her about the mark. "Are you afraid of it?" I said. She thought about this for a while. We were on either side of the fire, the wolves dispersed across the floor between us. "No," she said, "I am not afraid of things I did not choose. I am afraid of the things I did choose that turned out wrong." She turned her wrist over, looking at the branching lines. "This I did not choose, so it is not frightening. It is just very large." "Yes," I said. "I did not think this would happen to me," she said. "I had stopped thinking about it." She looked up. "I imagine you had as well." 19 years ago. She nodded as though this were a reasonable amount of time to wait. "Well," she said, "here we are." "Here we are," I said. She looked at me across the fire with an expression I was beginning to recognize, the look of someone who has turned a thing over until they can see all its sides, and has reached a conclusion that satisfies them. "I will come to the hold," she said, not as though it were a capitulation, as though it were a practical decision that had been pending and was now resolved. "I know," I said. "Don't be smug about it." "I am not being smug." "You are making the face." I did not know what face I was making. Whatever it was, she could apparently read it. That was new. That was, I found, not an uncomfortable thing to be. On the 4th morning, the wolves could walk. It was not a comfortable walk, I will not pretend otherwise. 4 injuries in a deep freeze, 3 hours over hard ground, and Corin's grip still uncertain on his left side. But they walked. Saren had given each of them a linen wrap for the worst paws, secured with the same 2 neat knots she used for everything, and she walked with them rather than ahead of them, which meant the pace was the pace of the slowest wolf and not the pace of any agenda. I found I did not mind. Varnholt's gates are not a small thing. My father built them from Keldric pine, ancient wood, nearly black with age and weather treatment, and they are 15 feet at the arch, and the hold itself behind them is all cut stone and torchlight and the smell of wood smoke that has seeped into the walls over 200 years of winters. I have never seen it from the outside the way a stranger sees it. I saw it through Saren's eyes as we came up the ice road. She looked at it the way she looked at everything, completely, without hurrying her assessment. "It is large," she said. "Yes. I had seen it from the road before, but not from here." "No." She looked at me. "Are you nervous?" I was not prepared for that question. "No," I said, and then, because she would know, "A little." She nodded as though this were also reasonable. "So am I," she said, "but I am generally nervous about things, and I do not find it prevents me from doing them." We went in. The hall was full. Word travels in a hold the way warmth travels through stone, slowly, thoroughly, and there is no stopping it once it has started. By the time we came through the gates, the council knew I was back. By the time we reached the hall, half the hold knew the patrol had broken through the ice and come home 3 men short of a full count, and by a path they had not taken on the way out. And by the time I walked through the hall doors with Saren beside me, someone had told them about the healer. I want to describe the room as I entered it, because it matters. My council stood at the long table, 7 men and 2 women, each one of whom has served me for more than a decade and earned their place. They were looking at Saren. Not unkindly, most of them, but with the careful, assessing attention of people who have learned that surprises in their alpha's life have consequences for their work. My beta stood at the near end of the table. Davan is 26. He came to me 2 years ago from the eastern foothills with a good record and better instincts, and he has justified both. He is not a bad man. But he was looking at his elder sister with the expression of a man who has not thought about his elder sister in some time, and is now confronted with evidence that she has been existing, in full, without him. There was on his face something that was not guilt, not quite, but it was in the neighborhood of guilt. Saren saw it. She looked at him the way she had looked at her wrist on the first night, completely, without rushing toward a conclusion. She did not greet him. She did not give him the out of a greeting. She turned back to the hall. I stepped to the center of the room. My patrol broke through the ice on the crossing, I said. 11 of us went in, 7 came out. The other 5 were pulled from the water by the healer of the ice road, who then carried the last one, which was me, to her cabin and kept us alive until we could travel. The hall was very quiet. Her name is Saren. She was of Marin's Hold, Eastern Foothills, until she settled at the crossing 2 years ago. I let this land. I watched my council do the arithmetic of it, the Eastern Foothills, 2 years ago, the beta. She is the most capable healer I have seen work. She is the bravest person I have watched in the water, and she is my fated mate. The mark on my wrist was visible. I had not hidden it. The light in the hall caught it, the branching lines, the evidence that cannot be argued with or managed or asked to wait. On Saren's wrist, the same. The council looked. My beta looked. His face moved through something I could not name from across the room, several things in rapid succession, ending somewhere I had not expected. Not anger, not the defensive pride of a man whose sister has been elevated past him. Something that looked at the end of it like the cracking open of a thing that has been sealed too long. Saren was looking at him. He looked at the floor. One of my elder counselors, Harthen, who has been with me since before my father died and who has seen more in this hall than I have, got to his feet first. He moved out from behind the table and walked to Saren and stood before her and bowed. Not the bow of ceremony, the bow of a man who means it. The others followed. The wolves from the patrol, the 5 who had come back through the gates beside us, were in the hall. I had not told them to be. They had simply come, the way wolves come to the things they are certain of. Lena crossed the floor and sat down at Saren's left side. The others arranged themselves around her with the quiet, absolute authority of creatures who have already decided. My wolf was full of a warmth I had not felt in 19 years, a warmth I would spend the rest of my life learning to deserve. Davan came to the south corridor after the assembly. He waited. I could see him through the window, standing in the cold without his cloak, which is either the particular stubbornness of a young beta or the particular stubbornness of a younger brother who knows he should be standing in the cold. Saren saw him too. "You should go," I said. "I know," she said. "He is going to fumble it at first," I said. "He is young." "He is my brother," she said. "He has been fumbling it for 26 years. I have some practice with it." She pulled her cloak and went out, and I watched through the stone window as she crossed the corridor flags toward him, and he looked up, and whatever he said first she listened to without making it easy for him, and then she said something back that made him look at the floor again, and then she reached out and put a hand on his arm, and he bent his head and she let him. I looked away. Some things are not for a king to watch. That winter was the hardest we have had in Varnholt in 20 years. The freeze held until late in the 4th month, and the ice road needed rebuilding twice, and the eastern foothills supply line was slower than we had planned. I want to tell you this because I want to tell you what Saren was in it. She was not in the hall organizing ceremonies. She was at the crossing 2 days out of every 7, because she had made me promise that the 3 families on the ice road would have a healer within reach, and I had promised it, and she was not a woman who let promises dissolve into intention. She had trained 2 women from the hold to cover the days she was in the hall. She did not wait to be asked or assigned this task. She simply identified the need and began. She rewrote the hold's inventory of medicinal stores, which had not been comprehensively reviewed in 6 years. I know this because she brought me the ledger and showed me the gaps with the same calm precision she had shown me everything, and said, "This is a problem you can fix," and then told me exactly how to fix it. She did not become someone else when she came to Varnholt. She became more fully herself, which is, I have come to understand, what the right place does. My council, which is not a council of soft people, was won over before the 2nd month. Not by her title, not by the mark, not by the ceremony, but by the particular quality she had that I had seen in the cabin, the willingness to be in a room without performing for it. Harthen told me at the end of the 2nd month that she had come to him with a question about the water rights dispute in the Western Valleys, and that in the course of that conversation she had identified an approach he had not considered, and that it had been the right approach. "Where did she learn to think about water rights?" he asked me. "I do not know," I said. "She was living on a border for 2 years. She paid attention." He nodded slowly. "You should not waste her," he said. "I do not intend to." Davin requested a formal conversation with me in the 4th month, and came in with the prepared expression of a man who has rehearsed what he is going to say. He managed about 3 sentences of it before he stopped. "I left her behind," he said in a different voice entirely. "When the council brought me to Varnholt, I let them tell me she had chosen to stay. I knew she had not chosen. I did not push back." "No," I said. "I was ambitious," he said. The word cost him something. "You were 24, I said. "Ambition at 24 is not a character flaw. It becomes one if you let it calcify." I looked at him. "What are you going to do with the knowledge that you left her behind?" He thought about this. "Be better than that," he said. "Then be better than that," I said. He has been, not perfectly, he is 26 and he has a pride that is still learning its own weight. And there are mornings when Saren gives him a look that says she has not forgotten. And there are mornings when he gives her a look that says he has not forgotten either, and between them that reckoning is ongoing. But he comes to the crossing on her healer days now, not to help, she does not need his help, but to be there. To be present in the place he was once absent from. It is not enough, it will take years to be enough. But it is not nothing. I want to tell you about one night, toward the end of that first winter, when the freeze finally began to break, and the water under the river ice could be heard again. A deep, slow sound, like the land breathing out after holding its breath for months. Saren and I had walked the ridge above the crossing, which she does at the end of each of her healer weeks, ostensibly to check the ice conditions, and actually, I think, because the view from the ridge is the only view in the territory from which you can see both the hold and the foothills at once. She stood at the ridge edge for a long time, looking east. I did not ask what she was looking at. After a while she said, "I used to think this was as far as my life was going to reach, the crossing, the 3 families. The evening round." She did not say it with regret or with the performed grief of someone who wants to be comforted. She said it as a person states a true thing. "I was making peace with it." "Were you at peace with it?" I said. "I was almost at peace with it," she said. "There is a difference." "There is," I said. She looked at the river below us. The ice was grayer now, translucent in places, the water visible beneath in dark shapes. The same river that had taken me under. The same river she had gone into after me in the cold and the dark without any certainty of what she was pulling out. "If you had been any other wolf," she said, "I would have done the same." "I know," I said. "I want you to know that," she said, "that it was not about you, that I would have done it regardless." "I know," I said again. "That is exactly why it was about you." She turned and looked at me with the expression I had been learning all winter, the one that means she is deciding whether to say the next thing or hold it. She said it. "I was not looking for you," she said. "No," I said. "You came out of my river." "Yes. I am still somewhat annoyed by that." I looked at her. She was not annoyed. She had the face of a woman who has arrived after a long road at the place where she was always meant to land, and is not going to perform gratitude about it, but who is, underneath the composure, held together by a warmth so complete it has nowhere left to go except into everything she does. My wolf was warm. He has not been otherwise since the first night in the cabin. I took her hand, the marked wrist, the branching lines, the river's record of what we are to each other, and I held it, and we stood on the ridge while the freeze broke below us and the world moved into thaw. In the spring, when the first brown showed through the snowpack on the eastern slopes, and the ice road was passable without wraps, we held the naming ceremony in the hall. I had offered to hold it in the great torch hall, full ceremony, the full council in attendance and the pack assembled. Saren had said, "We can do that, or we can do it in the smaller hall with the people I actually know." We did it in the smaller hall. Harthen officiated, because Saren had come to trust him over the winter, and I trust no one more. The patrol wolves were present, all 11 of them recovered, Lena with a slight favoring of the left front paw that the healers say will pass by summer. The 3 families from the ice road had come in from the crossing, which Saren had tried to talk them out of on the grounds that the road was still uncertain, and which they had done anyway. Davin stood at the left side of the room. He had the face of a man attending something he knows he does not fully deserve to attend, and who has decided to attend it anyway and to stand straight while he does. It was not a long ceremony. Saren is not a long ceremony person. What I said simply, that she had pulled me out of the river and that the river had known what it was doing, and that I had spent 19 years waiting for a woman I could not see, and she had been at the crossing the entire time, doing the work, being herself completely, without audience. She did not cry. She is not a person who cries at the thing itself. She will cry later, quietly, alone, and consider it a private matter. What she said, "I was not looking for you, but I am glad my river found you." I was glad, too. I am glad still. Every morning I watch the hold wake up, the patrol wolves on the first circuit, the smoke rising from the kitchen, the light coming over the eastern ridge, and she is beside me, already awake, already thinking about something practical, and my wolf is the warmest thing I have ever known. The pack that once barely remembered she existed tends her name with a kind of care that borders on reverence now, which she finds faintly embarrassing and quietly does not correct. The 3 families from the ice road send word every time the crossing freezes. She answers every one. The ledger she keeps is up to date, as it always has been, as it always will be. And Davin, her brother, the beta, the young man who left her behind in the foothills and is spending his career making that true in a smaller and smaller way, came to me in the early spring and asked if there was a way to formally credit the crossing healer position in the pack record, so that what she had been doing for 2 years was not invisible. There was a way, we found it. She was not in the room when we made the change to the record. She found out later when Harthen mentioned it. She came to find me in the courtyard. "You did not have to do that," she said. "I know," I said. "It was already done," she said. "The work was already done whether the record said so or not." "Yes," I said, "but the record should say so." She looked at me for a moment. Then she looked away at the mountains, at the eastern foothills visible on a clear day from the south wall, at everything she had come from and everything she had built here. "All right," she said, "thank you." She went back inside. The record stands. The work stands. She stands, as she always has, in every cabin and every corridor and every frozen river she has ever walked into, steady, unhurried, completely herself. The best thing my hold has ever had the luck to recover from the cold. I did not find her. The river brought her to me, and the river knew what it was doing, and I have been grateful to it, to the cold and the breaking ice, and the particular night that put us both in the water, every morning since.